Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are traveling to Beijing. Now before we travel to Beijing, we had our own preconceptions about this place. If you've been in any Chinatown anywhere in the United States, you kind of have this vision of what China might be like based on that information, but the reality of what China actually is something else. It's an amazing place. Let me give you some pro tips. Tip number one, you do need to have a visa if you plan on traveling to China for an extended time, but you can get away with not having a visa if you use the transit policy where you're traveling for 10 days in China. In any event, this was our first stop. This is called the Temple of Heaven, and the Temple of Heaven is one of those amazing structures that you kind of have to see in terms of its architectural history. This is a UNESCO World Heritage site, so it is considered important in terms of cultural significance, and it is also built by the same dynasty that is responsible for the Forbidden City, which we will get to later in the video. This temple is considered a Taoist temple, and so that is something that you might be interested in. This area here that we're approaching is called the Circular Mound of Heaven, where basically anyone that prays in the center of this circular mound has their prayer magnified to the point where it reaches heaven. A lot of the people here were tourists, but there were a lot of Chinese citizens here, and they were all dressing up in some sort of old-fashioned cosplay. So you'll be seeing them interspersed throughout the video. You'll see people just kind of dressed up in traditional Chinese garb to take photos, which is just an interesting thing to me as a Westerner. That's not something we would ever do. It's something that is pretty common here, though. And what I'm more used to is where people would dress up around these historical sites in their own interesting outfits, and you would basically take photos with them, where you might pay a little tip. But yeah, here you actually dress up for that reason. And you can see inside this Temple of Heaven here, this is the actual Temple of Heaven structure. There are supposed to be 4 pillars in there that reach up into the heavens, which is an important concept. You could see there the cosplay people, and they are all throughout the video. It's not just at this one site at the Temple of Heaven where you might see people dressed up. It's in basically every single location we visited in China. So yeah, something to get used to. What surprised me about China was not just the fact that it was just so beautiful. Here you could see this amazing garden. It resembles nothing like the Chinatown that you might think of in New York. And here's a better look at those cosplay people. And I don't know if this is just something you would do as a hobby or what, or just for specific photos, but yeah, that was something that was there. But like I was saying, China is amazing in that its railway system is bar none one of the best in the world. Here we are taking the bullet train, and we're taking the bullet train over to the Great Wall at this point. But just technologically speaking, China is more advanced than I would have really imagined. This is the one of the train cars in the bullet train, and this is us making our approach over to the Great Wall. There are 2 options for the Great Wall. There is Badaling and Mutinyu, and we did the Badaling station. On the advice of some other tourists, we decided to take the cable car that would take us close to the top of the Great Wall and make our descent. Instead of perhaps walking up the Great Wall, we were going to be walking down the Great Wall, which is a good idea because it was a pretty sunny, hot day, and the Great Wall is some places quite treacherous in terms of climbing. And here you'll see how steep some of these areas can be in terms of the Great Wall and how many people visit the Great Wall on a regular basis here. But as I was saying, China is very full of historical landmarks and very modern for today's day and age. They have these really, really advanced cars. They have taken electric cars to another level, in my opinion. They are significantly more affordable than the Teslas you might see at the United States. And they are also quite technologically on par, if not better, than the Tesla cars that you might see. And so it's amazing to me how advanced China has really become and how clean the city is. There is quite a heavy security presence throughout the city, and it does make for a safer city, but obviously it may be a much more conservative culture. These are the sections of the Great Wall where you will be able to walk, and you could see how breathtaking these views can be. The Great Wall stretches out very, very far, and you could see it for pretty much miles and miles. The Great Wall extends to about 21,000 kilometers throughout Beijing, and really there are only small sections of the Great Wall that is actually walkable. The majority of the Great Wall is actually in ruins, but these are the conserved areas for tourists, and you can see that they do a pretty good job in terms of maintenance. The other fun fact about the Great Wall is that it took over 2,000 years to actually erect this massive structure all throughout Beijing, so there is quite a bit of history here, and you can see here how exhausting going up and down this thing is. But the other aspect of China that was really surprising to me was how cheap it was. It was one of the cheapest parts of our trip in terms of affordability, and for a very well-developed country like this, you would expect to pay much more to do a lot of the things here, but it was a surprise to me that it was so affordable. The cost of these monuments that we are visiting were generally really much cheaper than what you would expect to pay, and so it was really a stunning and happy surprise for us. Here we're approaching a toboggan, which is part of the Great Wall, where you can take this thing to go downhill, and my son wanted to do that, so we did it. If you haven't already, please like the video. It does help with promoting the video and certainly helps in terms of keeping us going here in terms of these videos. So thanks for all your support. But here we are taking that toboggan downhill, and it leads to the base of the Great Wall. And as we exit the Great Wall here, there are a few shops, but there was also this little area where they had a bunch of black bears. Why? Black bears? I don't know. But there they are. They had a bunch of black bears there. This is a view of the subway system, and this is a view of those modern cars I was talking about. These cars are actually, I believe, Huawei cars. I didn't even know Huawei made cars. But yeah, these cars are really, really quite fancy in my opinion. They look advanced, and they are super cheap. That SUV you saw was less than 50 grand. So pretty cool. And we took a minute here to have some Chinese food to celebrate my wife's birthday. And again, on the cheap, that entire meal that you just saw there was about 25 bucks. The next stop here, we went to the Beijing Zoo to check out these panda bears. This was a bucket list thing for my wife. She wanted to see these pandas, so we spent a day just exploring the zoo. This is one of the largest zoos in all of the world, and we actually saw more animals from Australia here than we did at the Australian zoo that we saw in Sydney. So it was a pretty big exhibit, but you could see these pandas there. They were resting the entire time we were there. They were basically sleeping, but super cute. We also had some monkeys. They had a few other animal exhibits here, and the polar bears. They had lions, they had tigers, and of course they had bears. So a very, very large zoo exhibit. So the one big downside about China, which wasn't such a pleasant surprise, was its big red firewall of China. So this big red firewall basically blocked all of the American sites like Google from entering the city. Here you could see the kangaroos that we saw. But there is no Google here. They have different websites for web searching, and they're all in Chinese. So just be aware of that. There is a way to get around that firewall, and that is basically to have a private VPN. And so if you are interested in making sure that you stay in touch with your American websites, make sure you have a VPN. Every morning at our hotel, we'd see these ladies doing a bit of Tai Chi while we pigged out at breakfast. And the next stop here on our tour was the Summer Palace. So far in China, we have seen basically every World UNESCO site that you could see in Beijing. The Summer Palace is the best preserved and the largest of the imperial gardens that are here in China, and so it's a quite popular attraction, and it's a very, very large space. You're going to see a very large lake, and at the lake you can hire a boat to have you go around the lake, and it's quite a nice and pleasant afternoon that you can spend here. But you can see that there are quite a few tourists here. The buildings on the grounds, you'll see a lot of architectural detail. This is one of those buildings here where they had all of these little mini figures all over the wall clad to that building. And this is a picture of that lake. One of the Chinese citizens there having a conversation with my wife about Chinese history. And this is one of the most famous attractions at this Summer Palace. This is known as the Tower of Buddha Incense. And basically it is just a steep walk up these stairs to get to the very, very top of this tower that's kind of overlooming the entire park. And again, just a bunch of great examples of Chinese architecture throughout. Once you get all the way to the top, you'll get this image at the very top here of that statue. And once we got up there, we started making our way down. It was a little bit of an exhausting climb up those stairs, particularly on this day when it was so hot. But it was worth it, considering we only had a few days here in China. And you can see here how many tourists come here. There was a little bit of the cosplay people here as well. You'll see later on they have a very nice floral garden on the grounds here where you'll see a lot of people kind of taking part in that. Here is the Opera House at the Summer Palace. And here's the stroll through one of the imperial gardens, and this is the lotus garden that I was referring to earlier, where they had a bunch of these lotus plants planted all throughout this small little lake that they had, and just a very nice area to take some photos. The lakes did have koi fish all throughout, and so you'll see some nice little koi fish swimming in the lagoon as well. A word on the Chinese people that we've met here. We didn't have any bad experiences with the Chinese people here. I thought that they were gracious and very kind and very, very reserved. They are very respectful. It is important that you do have Google Translate on your phone and upload it before you arrive because of that firewall. But having that available is very important. Not a lot of people here speak English, and if you do run into some people that do speak English, it's kind of a lucky thing to run into. So just be prepared for that. The next stop on our trip here was Forbidden City. We did this on the day before we left, and it's again another amazing example of the Chinese architecture that was prevalent throughout this time period during I believe the Ming Dynasty. So again, just another World Heritage site. You can see here the people in their costumes again. And we're talking families here, not just, maybe a couple of people just taking photos, but entire families just dressing up to do this. So again, something that we're not quite used to, but it is something that happens quite often in parts of Asia. When we make our trips over to other parts of Asia, like Cambodia, for example, you might also see that. But this is a very, very important site. This was basically the imperial palace for 500 years, so you would see a lot of government business being conducted at the Forbidden City. Right next to the Forbidden City is the Tiananmen Square. And the Tiananmen Square, these days, you do have to have a reservation. So if you do have tickets to Forbidden City, that grants you access to get to Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square is the largest public square in all of Asia. And so it's quite important. They just had a military parade here before we arrived. You could see the heavy security presence there. But before we did our tour here, they did have a pretty public display of their military weapons in this parade. And a lot of the leaders in this area were there, like Putin and Kim Jong-un. But that was our trip, and we made our way back to the airport. And at the airport, even the airport was beautiful. They had this amazing little garden in the airport. So while you take a look at that, let me just talk cost briefly with you. The lodging, we spent $587 for a week in Beijing. Transportation, $687, excuse me. And this is because we made some mistakes with the public transportation. Food was super cheap at $108, and the miscellaneous tours that we did cost a total of $150, bringing the total to $1,532 for an amazing low-cost average per day of $219, which is an amazing cost for such a beautiful city. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. Next stop, Hong Kong. Thanks. See you soon.